New polls after weeks of Black Lives Matter riots and Trump's soaring Mount Rushmore speech show nothing less than a coming Trump landslide. In this video, we're going to take a look at the latest results showing Americans' opinions about the race riots, the destruction of our monuments, and the defunding of police, and how their sentiments are shifting clearly in the direction of Trump and a coming landslide victory that promises to be absolutely disastrous for the Democrats. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Wonderful to be with you. As always, patriots all over the world. If this is your first time here at this channel, I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events and some super awesome conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell. And the bell is gone, isn't it? Just smack the subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have as a regular part of this channel as we together celebrate the collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. But first, before you do anything else, make sure to click on that link below and head on over to my special website for My Patriot Food Supply. As we saw with the whole pandemic insanity, we cannot wait for an emergency to happen before we respond to one. And no one makes preparing for an emergency more ridiculously easy and affordable than our good friends over My Patriot Supply. Gang, they're simply the best. Their food kits last up to 25 years in storage. They include breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And best of all, they have a guarantee policy that'll absolutely knock your socks off. And if you act now, you can save $100 off a full 4-week emergency food supply when you click on the link below to my special website. You heard that right, 100 smackers off, so don't wait. I've got my food supply. Make sure you get yours. Click on that link below or go to my special website, preparewithsteve.com, and save $100 off your very own 4-week emergency food supply today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here with the Black Lives Matter riots finally beginning to wear out their welcome, as if they were ever welcomed. But as the dust clears from all the destruction and havoc wrought upon our nation, and with the astonishingly beautiful vision of civic nationalism still ringing from Mount Rushmore with Trump's epic speech there last Friday, we are indeed beginning to see the polls shift dramatically in Trump's favor. Now, let's start with what's being touted as the Trump shock poll from the Express. Now, this is a poll that was just conducted by the Democracy Institute. It's a Washington, D.C. think tank. And according to the poll, Trump and Biden are now officially tied at 47% each. Now, just in case you think this is wishful thinking, this tie has been corroborated by a recent Zogby poll that shows the Biden lead has completely vanished. Both Biden and Trump are now tied at 46% each. But the Express article goes on to point out that though the two are tied in their national polling, Trump has opened up a 4-point lead in the crucial swing states of Florida, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and yes, even Minnesota. On average, Trump leads 48% to Biden's 44% in these crucial swing states. Now, at this point, according to the poll, Trump has 309 electoral votes as compared to Biden's 229. Moreover, we're seeing a very pronounced trend among voters increasingly rejecting the riots. 79% of those surveyed denounced the removal of historic monuments and statues. 77% disagreed with the notion that Mount Rushmore was somehow racist. 59% supported Trump's handling of the protests, which is very good news because at the beginning, when the Democrat mayors and governors were basically orchestrating a mutiny against the president by abdicating their law enforcement authority, Trump looked quite weak for a bit. He was, talking loudly but carrying a flimsy twig. But now he's been noticeably, cracking down on Antifa and Black Lives Matter. We did a video on this just recently, while at the same time giving soaring speeches celebrating our civic nationalism, our monuments, our shared history, our destiny as a united people. In contrast, 60% of voters think Joe Biden has been insufficiently critical of the riots, and only 27% thought Biden was a strong leader. 67% believed Trump to be a very strong leader. If you really think it through, it was as if the poll was taken among a bunch of Trump supporters. The data is so favorable to Trump. 71% say all lives matter reflects their sentiments far better than only Black Lives Matter. That's bad news for Don Lemon, CNN's official shill for all things woke. Another factor with this poll is the amount of people who reject the whole notion of defunding the police. 75% of voters reject defunding the police. This was corroborated by another poll, a new YouGov poll that showed only 16% of Americans actually approve of what Democrats are trying to do in terms of defunding the police. And that included only 33% of blacks in support of the measure. 65% of Americans opposed the measure in the YouGov poll. 65% including a majority of black voters. So you're seeing a pattern here. This is why pundits are starting to come out recognizing that the Democrat platform for November is turning out to be an abject disaster. Black Lives Matter, defunding the police, destroying monuments. This is turning out to be an absolute disaster, and no amount of propaganda from the left-wing Marxist media is going to be able to save them from that disaster. Now, we actually know why this is the case, and we've talked about this on other videos. We have studies out that show that riots and acts of civil violence and destruction have the effect of making America more conservative. As it turns out, riots don't win elections for Democrats. An assistant professor at the Department of Politics at Princeton recently published a paper that concluded that the political effects of riots consistently benefit the political right. What he did, for example, is he looked at 137 violent protests that followed Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination back in April of 1968. What he found was that if your county was proximate to the riots, then your county voted 6 to 8 percentage points more for the Republican than it did in the previous presidential election. In 1965, you had what were called the Watts riots in California, in LA, and the Democratic governor at the time, Pat Brown, he ended up losing the 1966 gubernatorial election by 15 points to one Ronald Reagan. And keep in mind, too, that the Baltimore Freddie Gray riots and that were just months after the Ferguson Michael Brown related riots, those were just months before the 2016 election. And so we seem to be seeing a pretty clear pattern that riots and civic violence consistently favor the political right in the elections following those riots. And these polls appear to be bearing that out. Again, what we have to remember in all of this, actually Politico did a very interesting story on this. Pollsters, and again, these are opinion pollsters, that's an important distinction there. They've had a very difficult time figuring out how to include a representative sample of white male voters without college degrees. So these tend to be rural voters, and they have yet to figure out how to factor them into their samples in a way that accurately reflects their numbers and how they actually come out to vote. And this was an utterly fatal flaw in the opinion polling 2016. I mean, this was a flaw across the board in the polls. White men without college degrees tend to be radically undersampled and underrepresented in this polls, and that was a fatal flaw in 2016 in terms of the predictability of those polls. According to a study done by the British political scholars Roger Eatwell and Matthew Goodwin, I think it was published in 2018, white voters without college degrees comprised 2/3 of Trump's base in the primaries and an astonishing 3/5 of his base in the general election. And here's the key. Here's what's so interesting. Hillary Clinton lost among white voters without college degrees so badly, again, here's the key, that even if she had received Obama's turnout among blacks, she still would have lost. So let me say that again, because I think it's so pivotal, especially with now Kanye entering into the race and possibly siphoning off black votes from the Democrats. Hillary Clinton lost among white voters without college degrees so badly that even if she had received Obama's turnout among blacks, she still would have lost. We saw this in county after county after county. One of my favorite studies from the 2016 election is what's called the Great Revolt Study. It was published in 2018. And the authors found that they start off by citing Ashtabula County in Ohio, which is on the eastern side of the state near Pennsylvania, as a sort of a microcosm of what happened in 2016. Ashtabula County has voted for every single Democratic candidate, presidential candidate, since the 1980s. They voted for Barack Obama twice, 55%, Kerry, you name it. But in 2016, to everyone's shock, the voters of Ashtabula County defected from that voting pattern And they voted for Trump over Clinton by a 57% to 38% margin, a nearly 20-point margin, which represented a 31-point swing from the Democrat candidate to the Republican in relation to the other elections. This study, it's a very detailed study, the Great Revolt study, found that what happened in Ashtabula County happened in county after county after county, 35 counties throughout Ohio, 23 counties in Wisconsin, 32 counties in Iowa, 12 counties in Michigan, 19 counties in Minnesota, all of whom voted for the Democratic presidential candidate in every single election since the 1980s, switched over and voted for Trump in 2016. All told, nearly 700 counties that twice sent Obama to the White House. A stunning 1/3 of them flipped to support Trump. Trump also won 194 of the 207 counties that voted for Obama either in 2008 or 2012. And I need not tell you that these polls that the Democrats are once again, we're finding with these polls, they're once again excluding white voters without college degrees by focusing on Black Lives Matter and identity politics and cultural Marxism. The Democrats are repeating the very same mistakes they made in 2016, but now with a candidate that voters are even less enthusiastic and 30 to 60% believe has dementia. So needless to say, I think these polls are beginning to reflect an evening out of the sentiments of most Americans with the candidate that they plan on voting for, as more and more Americans solidify their stance on opposing Black Lives Matter, opposing defunding the police, opposing knocking down monuments, and calling Mount Rushmore racist, the more they are throwing their support, they're lining up their support behind Trump. And when we add the underrepresented white voting, male voter without college degrees, we are seeing nothing less than the massive landslide setting up for November. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on Kanye West's declaration of war against the Democratic Party and how it all but ensures the Democrats' destruction in November. You are not going to want to miss this. Lots of good news today, so make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.